Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Practical Guide to a Positive Full Life with your guide, me, your go-to friend. Today we're going to have a special guest on, Stephanie, a very good friend of mine. I'm going to go over to her and let her introduce herself. Stephanie?
Hi, Carlos.
Hi,
I'm
welcome.
I'm a senior vice president in real estate. I'm in Detroit. We're in the pandemic. I think a little bit about me is I lead a team of 315 team members. So building operations, parking, engineering, property management, cleaning services, crisis management. It's all me and my team.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're probably very, very busy. And without further ado, we're going to be talking about today the growth video and in reference to the overall growth of the program. Stephanie has been very gracious to come up with a couple questions that she thought would be useful as follow-up and wanted a little more clarification on. So with that, I'll go over back to Stephanie. If you could read me your question, please.
Well, and is it the perception of time? Because you hit on a couple of things there. You mentioned when you trained other people, you had to let go of your ego
Mhm.
and that you had to think about just the math of 10 people doing 10 times as much as what one person could do. And then the fact that you make time. And so that's the other thing where I think you asked me to think of a work example. So I have a team that's a little bit over a third of my whole company. So I have 7 direct reports, 5 of them are vice presidents. I have like 12 directors, and then I have a lot of managers. And something that I've learned as I've taken on these new teams is that concept of letting go of my ego. Because I
Mhm.
was for a long time an independent contributor. I worked directly for the CEO. I had one direct report that was an admin, and literally everything he gave to me, he was like, you can't delegate this, you got to do it yourself. You can't delegate this, you got to do it yourself. Now I'm in a world where stuff is coming to me from the CEO every day. And I'm like, great. So here's this person's going to do this person's going to do this. So I have to give these things up. I have to trust them that I've structured it so they can do it. And I check back in. But I have to let go of the idea that I am doing it or that I'm doing all of it. And if the CEO asks me, I'm going to say, well, team member A, they have this portion. I'm checking in with them to see what came back. Team member B has this portion. I'm checking in with them to see what comes back. So I have to let go of like either the light on me that I've walked down from heaven and I can do all this stuff, or assuming my shoulders are so broad to carry everything, and all these different people get involved. And if they don't do it well, I think to your point, you have to let go of how you feel about it and say, what's the feedback that makes this person better at this? Or what's the help that this person needs? And I found the more larger my span of control, the less control I actually feel like I need to have, as in I don't need to necessarily micromanage every single person. And the more I just need to be aware of what's on their plate so we can balance the plates. Some people's plate was a little bit light when I came in. Some people's plate was extremely heavy. So we took some things off one and put them on the other. And then everybody gets their check-in and we see how they're doing. We see what they need. We see where they're going. And so I think that piece of letting go of your ego or yourself is about like, how do I de-stress or deal with this anxiety? Well, the monkey, or, I think they say the monkey on your back. So the burden on my back, I've now shared it. So it's a little bit lighter.
No,
But
I think that's very, very good to do. I think that it's what you have to do. There's really no way around it. I would tell you that it sounds like you're doing a great job, and I think that you're very aware and that you're improving and you're trying new things, and that's really the secret. My suggestion would only be, and it's based on my belief that a good manager is meant to get the most out of their employees. And I would say the only thing I would mention is that you need to cater specific to each person. We don't all learn the same and we don't all get managed the same. A lot of times the managers that I've seen, they manage the way they like to be managed, or they manage the way they feel most naturally managed. And it doesn't work. You have to manage people differently because some people need a lot of handholding. Other people feel really suffocating from so much handholding. So you need to adjust and you need to be aware of that. But I think the one thing that connects back to that ego for me was when I'm coming to an employee, I remember I didn't want to work weekends, and I made it so that I negotiated not to work weekends, and that was great. But I would still get calls from my employees, and I'd be like, "Why is this happening?" And it was because I thought I had all the answers, and I started being like, "Well, what do you think?" And they'd be like, "What?" And I'd be like, yes, what do you think you should do? And so many times they came to the conclusion where I was like, well, that's not what I was thinking, but that could work actually. And other times
Mhm.
I'm like, that's not as good as my idea because I was still had a little ego in there. But I'm like,
Yeah.
it's so much better if they just try on their own because next time they won't call me. And that was a motivator too. But it forced me to just get rid of that and just flush it out and be like, because the more I did it, the more I realized like, wow, they had great ideas. And some of them turned out better than my idea, most likely. And you just realize like, wow, you really need to take advantage of people. And it goes back to the, one of the sayings, and you got to surround yourself with people smarter than you. And don't be afraid of it. And that's going to make you more powerful, make you better, and just make you look better as well. So I would say it's all connected, and there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I used to do it this way, but it doesn't work anymore. I think mid-sized companies, when they move to large, is they see the same thing. They can no longer, the CEO can't be everywhere. So they need to start to trust other people and to allow them to make their own mistakes and learn from them. Now, again, that takes spilling
Oh,
out.
that's scary.
Oh,
People can
exactly.
make mistakes. That's so scary.
Yep, yep. But I think it sounds like you're well on your way. I would say continue to think about these things because again, if you don't take time to think about them, you just keep trugging along and you just don't realize that you're digging yourself into a ditch. And so it's really important to not be afraid of realizing you're in a ditch. So many people actually think I don't want to think about it because what if I'm digging myself in the ditch? And I'm like, but you're gonna be digging yourself further. Isn't that worse? Or I talk to people who are like, why did I just realize this thing? 20 years I've wasted. And I'm like, there's people on their deathbed who haven't realized this thing. So
Hmm.
be happy you realize it at the time you realize it took you the right amount of time. The same thing with what your work. It takes you the amount of time it takes you. And if it takes you a certain amount of time to learn a lesson, be happy because you learned the lesson and move on. But stop dwelling in reference to, oh, I should be better, I should be
Well,
faster.
it's like, what's better and what's like, who are we? We compare ourselves to this like mythical
Mhm.
unicorn worker. Who's better and faster than what you can physically do in a day?
Exactly.
Like, Beyonce has the same hours in a day that I do, but she has a team of
Yes.
200. Somebody makes all of her food. Somebody does her hair. Somebody does her makeup. Somebody's feeding her child her breast milk. Like,
Yes.
do you know what I mean? But we're like, wow, if Beyonce can do it, but I'm like, where's your crew of 200 who's following you around, making your food, changing your kid's diaper? So we have these very, very unrealistic expectations.
Exactly. I think you hit it on the nose. We just whatever you are right now, whatever you're doing, you're good enough right now because you're
Mhm.
not living under a bridge. And maybe if you are, you might still be good enough. I don't know. But most of the time, the only person that matters that you're worthy and you deserve to be loved and you should love yourself is you. So many
Mhm.
times we're not good enough because we choose to not believe we're good enough. If we just believe it, then we are. And nothing anyone can say can ever take that away.
So, how do you find joy when there's so much that people are anxious and stressed and worried about? How do you find joy?
Now, this is something that's I took a long time trying to figure out. And it's a very good question. I literally read for months on different topics of trying to figure this out because it's really hard. It's so hard when the world is and everything's burning down and you're
Mhm.
just like, how do I keep Zen? And what I realized is I read a lot of things where people got themselves off mountains with broken legs and half an arm and people in the Holocaust and just all these things. And they all had one thing in common. They focused just on the thing in front of them. And the other part was they had love for themselves. They had a happiness for themselves. And they would strip them, they would take things, they would do so many horrible things in war to people. But the people who would come out of it mentally still okay, I mean, if you can call it that, is
Mhm.
they had this inner acceptance of themselves, that this joy, this love that nobody can take away. And I think this goes back to anything, because when you're trying to be happy, we keep thinking like we're happy in what terms in relation to what and to who. But in reality, all you really need is for you to believe you can be happy, one. And then the second one is then to allow yourself to be happy. If you do that, it doesn't matter what people say. And it's so empowering. I've seen so many differences. My family is really good at getting under my skin, and most families are because you grow up with them.
Mhm.
And I've seen such a different reaction in the last years because I know they're doing things, and I know they do them because they get a little scared. They They don't like what they see because the question goes back on them, and they attack or they do things. And now instead of like combating back or trying to fight back, I'm just like, yeah, maybe you're right. I am not perfect. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about you. And I really care about you and I love you and I really want to help you. And that just completely disables that. And it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to that because they're trying to make me feel bad. And instead of feeling bad, I'm just like, when you're happy inside, you just realize why they're doing it. It takes away, it just completely fades away. You're just like, you're just trying to do that because you're scared, or you're just trying to do that because you're angry, or for whatever reason. And it helps you really to see more clearly people's action when you are truly happy with who you are. You've acknowledged everything you've done. You are happy with the individual you are because you're worthy. So many
Mm-hmm.
times in life we're like, we're not good enough because of this, we're not good enough because of that, we haven't had enough food, we haven't had enough protein, we haven't enough sleep, we haven't enough exercise, we haven't all this crap. And you're enough right now. You just have to choose to believe that you're enough, because again, you only have a certain amount of time. And if you do that, you're just going to be so much happier. And I always tell people in their reflections to start off, the first thing you start off is appreciation and gratitude. In a lot of my research, I found that people who are happy are people who ground themselves, whether that be religious or non-religious. It doesn't matter. Just be appreciative of what you have. Be appreciative you had time to exercise. Be appreciative that you are having a job, that you are working with this. Be appreciative of the opportunity. So many times, like, oh, my boss gave me another thing, and be like, why don't you just be really appreciative that you have this opportunity to do it. It sucks maybe, or it doesn't, but whatever the point is, you have to ground yourself in appreciation, and that's going to help you with getting joy. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to only focus on the positive. Whatever emotion, whatever feeling you're feeling, you have to embrace it. I've found that the best way to deal with emotion is you hug it and you hold on to it. And you have to cry for 2 hours, and you cry for 2 hours. If you gotta punch something for 2 hours, you punch, not a person on a wall or something. But if you have to scream, you go scream. You have to go for a run, you go and run. And then once it's lost its power over you, that's when you can go and try to be more in your mind about it. Why am I feeling that? Where does it come from? Where, like, is
Mm-hmm.
it your childhood? Is it something you have an insecurity, a fear, and you can start processing it? So many people just shove it down, ignore it, or other people are like, I'm going to focus on the positive. You can't do that, because that's going to actually get more and more momentum and be more and more powerful. You have to address the positive. And on the flip side of that, what I've been much more conscious about in this past year is being on the positive side. I always say, why can't I be so angry I want to punch a wall? Why can't I be so happy I want to do the equivalent of punching a wall? And it's because I'm scared. I'm scared of showing that vulnerability to myself. And I have to get over it, because the times I've done it, it's such an amazing feeling to just be in the moment and be completely joyous. And so I guess to answer your question in simple terms, you just have to let yourself be happy. Assuming you can believe you deserve to be happy, then you just have to let yourself be happy. You can do that right now. You're good enough. You've done everything. And people tell me, oh, my past and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, no matter what it was, no matter how bad it was, I know that you did it the best of your ability. Because I don't believe anyone, whenever they come to a decision, they don't shoot themselves in the foot. You
Mm-hmm.
might, but it's an accident. You
Yeah, but it's not on purpose.
Exactly. And so why are we
Yeah.
going to be down in the dumps about it? Right? Learn from it. Maybe not carrying around a loaded weapon is a good idea. But like, learn from it, move on. But before, address the emotion. Maybe you're really angry because you shot yourself, right? But whatever the situation is, deal with the emotion and then move on, and let yourself be happy. Let yourself be in the moment. Stop trying to wait for the future, or stop, letting the past just drag you down. You have everything that you need to be happy right now. You just have to take the time to acknowledge it, and then let yourself be it, which is happy. Any follow-up?
The other thing I noticed is you said when you felt like you needed to punch a wall, you didn't just say like, I'm not going to be angry right now. So you sat in the discomfort of those emotions. And I, again, and maybe it's that false, like positive thinking culture of not sitting in the discomfort. I think for many, this election, the last 4 years for some people was a exercise in sitting in a really uncomfortable, scary place. And then, I know even Sunday, people were driving around downtown Detroit honking their horns with joy, but it was like, for a little bit, you had to be uncomfortable. And
Mhm.
what did it do for people? It galvanized some people to action. It made some people donate. It made people call their friends. But at the time, it was like, I hate this feeling. I hate this feeling of nausea and fear and dread. But then it spurred a result that for some people was a very joyous result. And so then how do we hug that moment of joy and then move to the next moment? And I definitely feel like this quarantine lesson in sitting in discomfort.
I think you
When
bring
you
up a
want to get out.
I think you bring
Yeah.
up a very good point, and I need to, I guess, reiterate that this happiness is from the inside.
Hmm.
I think it's not worth our time and effort to try to change others,
Hmm.
because it doesn't help. If you have a situation where this you have unhappiness coming from outside, I always say you have three options. One, you can just be like, it's not worth my time. It's so insignificant. It's gonna pass. It's an exceptional situation. It's just not worth it. Okay. The other one is you can choose to change yourself in hopes that that will change the environment. And many times it works. You'd be surprised. A lot of people think, oh, I can't change that person. But if you change how you communicate, you change the game, then they will most likely change with you and it'll be better. You have to do it with an open mind. You have to try to leave the past behind you. And it's very difficult, but you can do it. If that doesn't work, you always have the third option, and that's just leave. I always like to say, like, I've talked to people about their jobs, and I always tell them, look, imagine you're talking to a toddler. What will they say after they hear it? You go over this thing, oh, this thing, and the benefits are so good. Oh, but that, and then if you were to tell us the toddler at the end, they'd be like, so quit. And and so many times, that's really the solution, right? So in reference to happiness, uh, the first and most important thing you should do is to check that if something is causing you to be unhappy, whether you have power over it. And if you don't, then just distance yourself from it. But if you do, then by all means do everything you can. And if that still fails, then distance yourself from it. But what I'm referring to initially is happiness in who you are, not in reference to if you do something or because you did something, just being happy and feeling you're worthy right now, considering everything you did. It's entirely because it as an entirety. It's Stephanie does not do, you know, Stephanie is not one thing. The worst thing you've ever done, you're not that. The best thing you ever done, you're not that. You are a whole of all those things, right? And that's who you are. Now you can say there's more bad things or bad good things, but you're the one judging here. So, and it doesn't have to be good or bad. It could just be you, and that's what we need to come down to. Like, who are we getting judged by? We always say so many times we think, oh, the people outside of my work and my neighbors are judging me. But to be honest, they're in their own head so much they're not giving a rat's anything from
They're
you, right?
with their
And so many things it's
problem.
actually coming from us. All of it is coming from us. We think, oh, if I do that, my boss gonna think I'm lazy. If I do the boss is so in their own head, they don't have time to think about why you did it or what you seem like. They just want to get it done, right? So many times we're putting all this pressure on ourselves. And the moment we choose not to take it away, it just magically goes away because it's all coming from us. We believe we're not good enough. We believe we're not worthy. If you can just come to terms with everything that you've done in the past have has been thought out and has a reason, and that you're worthy, and just enjoy it right now, you're going to be happy. I really truly believe that if somebody can truly accept themselves for who they are as a whole, then they're going to see the beautiful and the good and just the whole thing, and then they'll accept
Mhm.
themselves and they'll truly see that they deserve to be loved, right? And I always say, think about it from another term. Some people are like, oh, if I do that thing, my colleague's going to think I'm lazy. And I'm like, if your colleague did it, would you think they're lazy? And they're like, well, no, not at all. You'd be like, then why are you doing that to yourself? You're just
Mhm.
making it hard on yourself. And it sounds so easy to do, but it's so, so difficult. It is extremely, because everything in our world tells us you're not good enough. The
Mhm.
moment we wake up, we didn't get enough sleep. The moment we go to work, we didn't finish that thing. When we end work, we didn't have enough time to finish that thing. It's just constant, right? And you just need to just shut it all out and be like, this is how long I take. I stand by my
Mhm.
work. I'm proud of my work. It's what I am. This is who I am. And that's good enough. And if you do that, you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Any follow-up questions?
You say, as we all are creating our mantras about, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, I am enough, I love myself.
It's true. I mean, it really is that simple. I know it's so difficult and so, you know, draining, but it's amazing. I truly believe, like, in creating these programs, and I mean, honestly, from a very young age, I struggled. I had a very, very rough upbringing. And I was like, why is it so difficult? Can't it just be? I'm not saying solve my problems. I'm just like, I wish something was out there to just get me on the right path, to figure out, like, this is the guide, right? And that's what I was really, that's what I'm trying to create here. And really, I truly believe that that first pillar um, is just acknowledging who you are and accepting it and
Mhm.
just believing you deserve to be loved, and then ultimately just loving yourself. It sounds so cheesy, it sounds so, you know, out there and fluffy, but it's really that simple. And I will admit it's a lot of work, but if you can do it, you're invincible, because whatever your boss says, whatever your colleagues say, whatever your partner says, you're just like, you don't see it as something, a reflection on you. You're just, it's a reflection on them, because that's what it really is. When they say things, when they do things, it's not because of what you did usually. Almost always it's because of how they're feeling, how they, see the perspective from their eyes. It doesn't have anything to do with you. We're just, in our world, everything revolves around us. And so we would
Mhm.
imagine everyone's else action would revolve around us, and they don't. They revolve around them, right? And so you just need to love yourself. And if you do that, it doesn't matter. No one can take, the amazing thing is, people can come, bullies can come, they can say things, and you're just like, yeah, sure, whatever. You see for what it is. They're just hurting inside. And you're just like, I love and accept myself. Nobody can ever take that away, because who is the judge here? You are. No
You
one
are.
else can be in your head. No one else can see what Stephanie does. No one else has your unique experience in this life is yours and yours only. Nobody can relate to it. So you are the best judge and reference to if you're good enough. And I'll tell you right now, you are. Everybody is. Just too hard on ourselves. With the exception of some sociopath and psychopath, you are good enough. Okay?
Yeah.
You are, right? And because we all just want to be good people. I truly believe it. We get misled by lots of other things that are difficult to decipher and navigate, and that's natural. We need each other. And I think this is probably one of the hardest things in this pandemic, that just because I'm solid doesn't mean that that happiness can grow and be better and be bigger when I share it with somebody else. But the difference, I always say, is if I come that you're already happy, then together we can make it better. We can share it and make it into something even greater. But if I come to you and I expect you to make me happy, that's where the problem lies, because nobody can do that. And that's where we're going to be disillusioned. That's where we're going to fail. And that's where we're going to struggle. Any
Cool.
follow-up questions?
No, I think you hit it on the head.
Good. Well,
I hope people play this first thing in the morning so it sets them up for the rest of their day.
I think that's a very good idea. But I know you got to go, so thank you so much for joining me. I always say the greatest gift you can give someone is time, so I truly and greatly appreciate your time. Um, did you want to say any last words before we end?
Oh, no, just thank you. Thank you for dealing with my never ending schedule changes.
No worries, no worries. I understand, especially nowadays. Um, for those interested, I do encourage everyone to check me out at Coltomita. It's on most social medias. And thank you for joining me. And remember that if you think this could help somebody, please forward it along. It's why I do it. I truly believe in it, and I'm very passionate about it. Thank you so much for joining us.